Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the south-afrifur podcast. You're listening to myself, Ivik Wolf, and Scratch is our co-host for this evening, as always.
Yo.
And this evening we have two very, very special guests, two people who've been very closely connected to the South African furry community for, I think, almost like 2-3 years now. That in Trace and Kit. And this evening, sorry, you guys can say hello if you'd like.
Hey.
Hello.
Just introduce which voice is which as well.
I'm Kit.
And I'm Trace.
All right. That's cool. Oh, goodness me. That's cool. Sorry. Bit on the nervy side for some reason. I'm not necessarily sure, but we're going to be going through with this. What we're going to be talking about tonight is both Trace and Kit were working at the MFF, Midwest Fur Fest, for those of you who are not that familiar with cons around the world, but definitely Trace and Kit were working there as helpers, as well as obviously going to the convention by themselves. I think this was your second year in a row now.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. So third.
First year volunteering.
Okay. First year volunteering. Cool. All right. So with obviously some of the things we want to talk about in respect to MFF is obviously it's the biggest convention currently in the world. It's done a lot of things in respect to sort of growing the furry community. Beyond that, obviously, it's going to need a massive amount of help staff. So being able to find out what it's like, whether people should join up, is it worth the extra stress of becoming part of a help staff, all those kinds of questions. But first, maybe I'm going to ask if you two could just introduce yourselves a little to our audience at large. We can start with you, Trace.
Okay. Well, I'm Trace. I joined the fandom probably about 3 years ago at this point. Was when I started really getting involved. I actually found my way into the fandom through the South African fandom, even though I live in the States. Because I met Badge through a mutual friend, and he kind of dragged me into the whole thing.
Nice.
Dragging
And
is
then
dragging is the correct term.
Yes.
It seems to be a very South African thing to do. Apparently, just drag everything and everyone, and our feet. And you, Kit? I know that we've had Trace on before, obviously. So for those of you guys who remember Trace from the previous time, hello. I think for some reason Kit somehow randomly spoke at some point in the previous one anyway.
That's quite possible.
That's very possible.
But yeah, a little bit more about you, Kit, if you'd like.
Yeah. I pretty much joined the fandom because of Trace. If Badge dragged Trace into the fandom, I ran headlong into it because of Trace. Yeah, just lots of cool people in the fandom, and I think for me a big part of it is, whatever you enjoy, you should enjoy unapologetically, and there's no really wrong way to have fun.
Unless it's cocaine.
Oh,
well,
fair enough.
I mean, if you enjoy having cocaine, I don't. Who is that even enjoyable?
Is there a way to responsibly use cocaine?
I don't think
so. I don't think so.
Yeah. So therefore, my statement stands. Unless it's cocaine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, there are a large amount of other things you probably shouldn't be doing along with cocaine.
It's true.
Like,
but being a
murder.
furry is a thing that you can do unapologetically.
Yeah, it's a couple of steps down.
You're not hurting anyone being a furry. You are, in fact, making a lot of really cool friends being a furry.
Yes.
So, it's a good thing.
Indeed.
I mean, and with that, just to sort of give a little bit of context, obviously you guys sort of found the fandom and things like that. And what were the actual reasons as to why you sort of, I think, ran as headlong as you did? What exactly happened I just want to contextualize how we're going to go forward into the MFF conversation and conventions at large.
Well, I guess for me, a big part of it was realizing that, even though I technically joined the fandom a few years ago, I've really always kind of been a furry fan and just wasn't knowledgeable enough about the fandom or wasn't willing to acknowledge that I wanted to be a part of the fandom until I had friends in the fandom who were just really awesome people that I wanted to get to know more, and showed me this really awesome community full of people who enjoyed things that I've always enjoyed. And so, yeah, I think just being able to jump into that culture was just kind of a step for me, and didn't see any reason to go about it hesitantly when I got to the point where I was willing to go for it.
All right. That's really cool. And for you, Kit?
Yeah, honestly, I just saw how much fun Trace was having in the fandom. And about the time he joined the fandom, I honestly was crushing on him really hard. And I kind of realized if I become a furry, it's going to be that much harder not to act weird around my crush, I guess. But when we started dating, I was like, okay, well, now that I'm in a relationship with this guy, I want to be a furry too, and jumped into it with him.
Huh.
Well, that's cool and cute.
That is the sweetest story. There's just a message on Discord, if you guys could just have a quick look there. But beyond that, like obviously, the conventions around America, obviously some of the biggest conventions in the world obviously happen there, and pretty close to where you guys live, yeah?
Somewhat.
Or how far is MFF from you? Let's ask that question.
Well, MFF is in Chicago, and Chicago is about an 8-hour drive away from where we are.
Oh, never mind then. Sorry.
I mean, it's still part of the Midwest.
It's just further south. Midwest.
It's further it's further east mostly, and a little north, I think.
Yeah, I always had this idea that Chicago was quite north.
Yeah, Chicago's fairly north. I mean, it's about the same distance from us as Denver is from us.
Okay. All right. So
is that your closest like big con geographically, or like is
because there is Denver
closer? Or
yeah,
Denver,
there is Denver. And, we haven't been to that yet, but we are thinking about maybe trying to attend this year. But yeah, that's the only con that we've been to really, and it's probably about the closest big con from where we are.
Just happens to be the biggest convention, so that's a plus point somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. We picked a good one.
It was funny. It was actually the first year that we started going that it turned out to be the biggest convention, because before that Anthrocon was bigger.
And, like, oddly enough, and I mean, like, because that could in fact be a conversation point anyway, like, would there ever be a reason or some sort of like a consensus as to why people might choose something like MFF over Anthrocon, for instance?
I mean, I'm sure there probably is. I imagine a big point for a lot of people might be that MFF might be a lot easier to get to. I know that's certainly something for us. I mean, 8 hours is still quite a trip, but it's not as bad as driving or flying all the way to the East Coast
Yeah,
where
fair enough.
Anthrocon is. And so I think MFF kind of benefits from being in a very central location, kind of in the middle of the country.
All right, that's actually pretty interesting because I know that that's sort of the correlation that I've been hearing quite often, especially while going through some of the messages in respect to either which one people would choose, either MFF or Anthrocon, and I think that was sort of the consensus point in respect to that it's more central than anywhere else. And I mean, I guess at least from our experience, myself and Scratches, like centrality doesn't necessarily mean that everybody would want to go either. We tried making that choice about 3 years ago,
And 3 times.
and 3 times. We were attempting to find like a central location in South Africa for everybody to get to, and that central location just became more expensive for everyone instead of, maybe 1 or 2 groups.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it's always a very, very interesting thing to, and again, like, I'm going to segue a little here. It's always an interesting thing to sort of deal with that kind of experience when you're dealing with, I guess, in many senses, especially when it comes to conventions, what one could consider to be customers, people coming to your convention, finding out like what they need to do. So when it comes to that, like, what exactly are the, I guess, main points that were given to you as con help? What were you guys sort of assigned to do? Was there certain designations where you were allowed to choose what you wanted to do? I know that hours was a thing that you mentioned as well. So maybe just run us through the entire convention helper or convention con staff. Would you guys be considered con staff, or is that like a step?
Okay, so there are two. So MFF is an entirely volunteer-based organization, and there are 2 categories that volunteers fit under. There's the actual staff, and no one gets paid, but the staff are more official. They have a set schedule for the hours that they're working, and it's kind of like working a job over the weekend. But then they also have a volunteer booth where anyone can stop by and just work however many hours they want to, essentially. So you can, even just show up and work for an hour, and or you can work for a few dozen hours.
And I mean, like, go.
There were 1 or 2 people who showed up to the con and just ended up spending the entire con volunteering. And in our volunteer Telegram group, they're just so like, yeah, it was a really great experience. We were happy we did that. Trace and I still attended most of the con, but there were a couple of people who really did spend the entire convention volunteering and were really happy with that decision.
Damn.
All right. Wags, what would make somebody want to volunteer for the entirety of the convention, for instance? What benefit would there be to doing that, for instance?
They do have it structured so that volunteers get little incentives to join. I think it's if you volunteer for just an hour, you get like a free t-shirt. Which is pretty nice in itself. But then if you volunteer for, I think it was 10 hours or more, then you get a free pass to the next convention.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
That's some incentive.
Yeah, and I think there's a few other minor incentives for volunteering a bit beyond that as well.
Okay, and Scratch, did you want to say something?
No, sorry. I just had to swat a fly in my room.
Yeah, it's hot down this side, so flies are.
I am sweltering. It's evening, and I'm sweltering.
Yeah. So, I mean, like the kind of work or the kind of jobs that you guys were what's the word?
Assigned to.
Yes. Sorry.
So basically, you'll like go to the desk and they'll be receiving calls from all over the con saying where they currently need help, like where they need volunteers. And so, you show up at the desk and they'll tell you, okay, we need 3 people to go help, or we need a whole group of people to go help with the art show, or we need a couple people to watch lines at the dealer's den, or things like that.
Yep.
And so, so a lot of what we did was, there are 4 days of the convention, and Thursday is mostly kind of a setup day. And so we volunteered for a few hours on that day because there wasn't a whole lot else going on. And so that day we were mostly helping with setup, things like putting up signs, helping get the art gallery ready, and kind of various things along those lines. Then throughout most of the rest of the con, we were doing things like checking badges in front of rooms, helping out with the fursuit lounges, various things like that, just where they need a body around.
Go stand.
Yeah.
Stand there and look intimidating.
Yep.
Really? I was joking. Like, was that like actually kind of a thing to do? Stand there and look intimidating.
Well, I ended up volunteering at the dealer's den for a little while, and like I didn't need to look intimidating, but it really was check badges as people go in, and if someone doesn't have a badge, turn them away, which I never had to do. No one with a badge tried to get past me.
No one without a badge.
No one without a badge. But there was, doing stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. And would you say that it go?
So the work is sort of like a mixture between security detail and like physical labor, and the admin is probably handled by the official con staff kind of thing.
Yeah. Most of it was, a minor amount of physical labor, like being volunteers, because of liability issues, we weren't allowed to like lift heavy things or anything like that.
Okay.
Because we weren't actual staff members.
Yep.
So we hadn't signed any waivers or anything. But we were able to like help out with things like inventory and things along those lines.
And with security, we would check badges in front of doors, but they had security staff to actually break up anything that was a problem.
Yeah, they had actual con security. We were mostly, just kind of like hanging out outside rooms. For things like the fursuit lounge, is basically just making sure that you didn't have a ton of people going in at once. They tried to keep it just one handler and one fursuiter at a time, just to keep the rooms from getting too clogged up. Because sometimes there were a ton of fursuiters coming in, and they really needed all the space they could have.
Everybody's hot.
Yep. Lots of fans in there.
Not just the actual fan. Yay! Most fun of the day. All right. So, and I mean, like that actually sounds like a lot of fun. The idea that you guys get to, both experience the little bit of the behind the scenes as well as obviously the con itself. Like, if we could.
Was.
Oh, okay. Because I mean, that seems like that. I don't know. When one talks about the full con experience, and I know that I've been barraged by that particular line far more often than I'd ever like to say. But, like, I want the full con experience. Like seriously, like create your own full con experience. So, if you could give a little bit of background as to what you would consider to be a full con experience. So you've experienced not like being part of help staff, and being sort of part of help staff? Like, which one of the two is more fulfilling, maybe?
I mean, I'd say that they're kind of so as an attendee versus a volunteer is essentially
Yeah,
what you're asking.
yeah.
I'd say that they're kind of fulfilling in different ways.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of fun to be an attendee and to just get to wander around the con and just see all the cool things and go to the vendors and go to all the panels. And I mean, I definitely would always recommend doing things that you enjoy at the con for sure. But then I think being a volunteer is fulfilling too, in being able to actually feel like you're a part of the con and are being able to help out with things too, and that you're not just not just showing up and leaving, but that you're actually able to help out. And
Yeah, you're putting your mark on it in a little way.
I mean, even if you don't feel like you have the biggest contribution, it's something that you can be proud of in a way, I guess.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like, oh yeah. And I mean, like, that's something that everybody should, I guess, at least once in their con life and con experience sort of experience. And full con, yeah, even Badge is background shouting about the full con experience. Yeah, I don't know, like that's just a meme going around between like us and, well, myself, Badge, and somebody else who is constantly asking for the con experience, even though they can't actually have said full con experience until they're 18. So speaking of that, now obviously, I think, if I'm not mistaken, MFF does have minors at the convention.
Yes, that's true.
Yes, it does.
So what's that like? I know that obviously from our side, I can't sort of give any experience from our side, particularly because we don't at this current juncture have under 18s at a convention. What kind of things do people sort of look out for? I know that there must be like some sort of code of conduct in respect to how you should behave around minors.
Yeah.
So
what's that all about?
there is a code of conduct, and like if you do inappropriate things in public, I think the security will come down on you pretty quickly. But from what I saw, there really weren't a lot of problems with that at the convention. Everyone seemed really well behaved, and it really was just an atmosphere where, lots of activity and lots of energy, but the kind of place where it would be safe to bring a minor. And then what they did is your badges. They had different badges for people who registered as adults and people who registered as minors. And then for 18 plus panels, they really checked badges for, did you pay to go to the con, but also, are you old enough to attend this particular panel?
Yep.
And then for minors who are young enough, they're not allowed to come by themselves. They have to have a parent or guardian with them as well.
What was the youngest age at the convention?
I'm really not sure. I mean, I wouldn't be too surprised if there were a couple people that brought like infants with them.
I think I remember seeing that at least one of these 2 years.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask sentience, like youngest sentience.
I'm really not sure. I mean, part of it is just that I don't really remember seeing too many minors, but then there are just so many people at the convention that I'm sure there are hundreds of people, if not thousands of people who are there that I never saw.
Yep.
Just because the massive crowds.
I do remember as I was guarding as I was checking badges for the dealer's room, at one point, a preteen girl dressed up in a costume, and her very perfectly normal looking middle-aged mom went into the dealer's together. And I thought it was really cool that, this mom who, I mean, maybe she is a furry herself. Who knows, but isn't getting into it as much as her daughter is still there, with her daughter going to the con and enjoying it with her and making sure that she has a good time. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. Like we've had moms of furries on like once or twice, and they very much advocated the idea of sort of getting involved with your kid if they show interest in the furry fandom, because the furry fandom is one of the very sort of is a relatively safe place to explore this kind of stuff, and everyone's super inviting and everything. So
Yep.
So yeah, that's that's definitely something to consider if you, well, A, you are a furry parent, and B, you are the parent of a furry, or vice
Yeah.
versa. Yeah.
Yeah. What like? Oof, wow, that was a weird what? Sorry.
What?
What?
Say what? Okay, sorry. We're done. I'm done. I promise.
Oh god. So when and I know the sort of parents currently, but like the kind of atmosphere that you would expect at a convention, was that exactly the kind of experience that you had from MFF? Was that exactly what you think? I mean, maybe you've gone to smaller meetups at some points, like maybe semi-organized. Were they any way similar? Do they follow a particular pattern for you? Is there something that sort of stands out from what you would consider to be a good convention? I know that you might not have been to many, but or at least differing ones. Was there ever a particular year where the convention went better out of the, I think, 3 years that you guys were there?
2 years.
2 years.
2 years. Okay, but one of you was there for 3?
Nope.
No.
Fuzz. Okay. The 2 years that you were there, which one seemed to be run better and why?
They were both run excellently.
Yeah, I think they were both run fantastically. I certainly don't think either of us personally had any issues with how the con was run, and I don't think I know of anyone else that had issues either. I think they both times did a very excellent job of making sure that everyone was safe, making sure that everything was set up correctly, and that all the facilities were in order, and just making sure that everyone had a great time.
Yeah.
But yeah, being on, I don't want to say con staff, being a con volunteer, I suppose there is a part of the con that you are privy to that most other people aren't. Is there anything along those lines that you can and or are willing to share? Like, what happens in the background, like behind the curtain?
Who freaks out and when?
Yeah.
I mean, again, it was really well run. There aren't like any skeletons in the closet to bring out.
Boo.
I think
I'd say, if anything, it was just that at certain points they did seem to be running low on volunteers. And so, yeah, sometimes I think it was hard for them to be able to switch people out, just because they didn't have people on standby to take over
yep.
for when someone needed to leave. And
Oh,
so...
okay.
So yeah, I think that was about the biggest issue that I can think of, is just they needed more people to help
If
at
you're
certain points.
If you're listening to this podcast and planning to go to MFF, help volunteer so that doesn't happen again next year.
Fair enough. And I mean, that's kind of one of the reasons why we this chat is that, like, for anybody listening, for anybody who is, considering going to a convention, and that convention does in fact have spaces for volunteers, it's always a very, very good idea. I mean, like, you look at Eurofurence, you look at any of the other conventions in the world, especially the big ones, are going to need people to help. And if like this, if your feedback is anything to go by, it's also it also helps network in some senses, because I mean I've heard from both of you, or mostly from Trace. I should really talk to you more, Kit. I'm sorry.
That's fine. I need to get on Telegram more often too.
Yeah. But so like, and I've lost my train of thought.
Again.
Okay. Yes, it's intermittent. It's it's left the station. It forgot to pick somebody up. It'll come back in a second.
How it goes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um,
So I was going some. Where I was going is like, yes, networking was the word that I was looking at. So I mean, you guys met a whole bunch of people at the convention itself. I remember hearing like you'd spoken to this person, you'd spoken to that person, or you'd shared these kinds of things with people. How exactly was that particularly because of the networking itself that you were able to get a little more intimate? Would probably not be the word I'd like to use, but it's popped to
maybe
mind.
not that word.
Hey there.
Well, if you're talking about some of the people that we met at the convention, with regards to some of the guests and the creators that were there, then I would say that was generally less related to volunteering and more just being at the con in general. It's kind of amazing how many of these names in the fandom that you would recognize very quickly are actually very approachable at the convention.
Oh yeah.
Like there's a lot of really big authors and artists and all sorts of creators that are just hanging around the dealer's den, and you can just walk up to their tables and start talking to them and tell them about how much you enjoy their stuff. And I mean, then some of them also have panels that you can go to, and I mean, you can always catch them at those and talk to them afterwards.
Yeah, that's something that's been a bit of a running theme with regards to cons and the attendees of the cons. Like, even the really sort of big names in the furry fandom, we don't have too many like sort of bad or assholes when it comes to like the big names. Everyone's really approachable. Everyone's like sincere and everything. There are a few big mouths, but I mean, it's for the most part, it seems that most of them are super approachable and super like, "Hey, how are you doing?" kind of thing.
Oh yeah, very much
definitely,
so.
Definitely.
Certainly, everyone that we've met has for sure been that way.
That's really good to hear.
Like, obviously, of interesting people we're speaking to, and a couple of interesting events that may have happened while speaking to them. For instance, I guess we can't necessarily talk about that. A particular person, one human being, two fursuits.
Oh yes.
Yes. But, and I mean, I'm assuming that happens. There are like people who represent two particular different furry personalities. How does that feel? Or like, how does one, for instance?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last part.
Yeah,
What
you
was
were
that?
breaking up a little bit, Ivik. Try again, please.
Yeah, like with say particular things like that, you have one soul but two different fursuits, for instance. Like, how does it feel to know that, say, one person would be two different fursuits, for instance? And I know that like this happens a fair amount of times.
Mm-hmm.
Mistaken, because I know what's it, Tayer? Is that her name?
Are you telling me that sometimes people have more than one persona?
Oh God, why? How could they? The betrayers of their species.
It seems like
I
cats
think
and
it-
dogs can get along.
Yeah.
Sometimes in the same body.
I think it's really cool that people will have multiple fursuits, and I know that sometimes I think people that do have multiple fursuits will actually lend out their suits to friends as well. Um, and so the person that's associated with the suit might not necessarily be the one who's always wearing it at the convention.
I'm not sure if borrowed somebody's suit, for instance.
Hmm.
You have.
Oh no, I haven't. I've never worn a suit. Would love to someday, but have not
Same for you.
gotten to do so yet.
Um, I don't know if it's something that I'm as interested in myself. I don't think wearing a suit is a bad idea. I don't take good care of my stuff, and I know that a fursuit is an expensive piece of equipment that needs to be taken care of.
Mhm. Yeah, fair enough. You need to comb it daily.
Take it for
I
a
don't
walk.
think that's
Make sure it's watered.
Take it for
It's not that bad, but
It's
it
like-
requires a general level of maintenance.
Yeah.
for general level of maintenance,
For-
so there's a bit more equipment than I'm willing to
Yeah.
make.
Fursuits aren't just for Christmas; they're for life.
Yes.
Yes, they are. That's why I haven't stopped by Walmart yet.
Like,
Don't get a
and
Walmart
speaking of
one.
that, yeah.
No, I
I'm
would
kidding.
never get a
I'm
Walmart.
kidding.
Yeah,
I don't
apparently
know.
that's becoming a thing too now. That people's suits are being sold as actual. What's the word?
Like rip-off
Not
suits
even-
from like AliExpress or
Yes,
something.
knockoff suits. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
I'm
Can
sorry,
you
that's
bloody
maybe
believe
not
that?
funny.
It is kind of funny. I mean, like, just imagine, like, you. Wow.
Like, okay, imagine an act like someone famous is like fursuit that you can like instantly recognize, like telephone or something like that. And
Mhm.
imagine then a Chinese knockoff version of that. That is there is a market for that.
It is,
Oh
and it's happened.
boy.
In fact, if I'm not mistaken, there was a controversy this year, this like 2018 year, where a particular, and because they were relatively well known online in the online community because they were a YouTuber, they had and they were also mistaken, they were not first aider, but they were a medic, and they had passed away.
Wasn't it
somebody
like
had
lemon
made-
husky or something? Lemon coyote.
Yes. I think it's lemon husk. But the thing is that they passed away. Somebody had made a knockoff of their suit and paraded around in it.
Oh no.
And, yeah, it was a massive thing on Twitter, social media. They had like put the person on blast, like goodness knows. And it's
Ugh.
particularly, I think it's got a lot to do with the idea that though it's not like strictly copyrighted, it still is like you're taking somebody's personality and you're watering it down and then
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is some amount of. I mean, there is some weird copyright law stuff with regards to making an original character. You know, where
It's-
to some
it's
extent
falling
you
apart.
do own the rights to that character, and so, I mean, maybe you don't necessarily have it in writing, but I think you have kind of like, do you know what the term is for it?
I don't know what the term is, but I
Intellectual
know
property?
that in the United States, at least,
Yeah, I think
when
it's
you make a
intellectual
piece of
property.
art, you technically have the copyright to it. The hard part
Yeah.
is proving it if someone ever rips you off.
I think it's yeah, it should be intellectual.
Yeah, intellectual property. Yeah.
An IPP or something like that. An IP.
Yeah, the IP of it.
Just IP.
Yeah, just intellectual property laws.
And in that sort of same sense, there are many brown wolves, grey wolves, white wolves,
Yeah.
all made by, say, fursuit makers who sort of, I don't know, get asked to do something similar to somebody else's, particularly if it's a generic color, for instance, which is one of the reasons why we probably find so many rainbow furries out there.
Sparkle dogs.
Sparkle dogs, or
It's
dark
like-
green or blue. we're not original in that sort of same sense. I mean, there's blue people with green hair, yes, and maybe for that, like when it comes to going to say a convention, you see a lot of fursuits. Did you ever see very very similar fursuits to one another? Maybe even made by the same creator.
Um,
Definitely ones made by the same creator.
yeah,
Mhm.
I would say there is a fair bit of similarity between some fursuits, and yeah, sometimes it is just people have similar designs, and so fursuits kind of look similarly. But then there are also some really cool instances where people actually have complementary fursuits, where they're made by the same creator and say that they'll have alternating colors. You know, like instead of being black and white, they'll be white and black. You know, something like that. And it's
interesting.
really cool seeing those sometimes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I guess Galahad has it on the. Because again, like speaking from that sort of thing, I think if I'm not mistaken, my persona is like 2 or 3 shades darker green than Jib Cody's. But
Yep.
in that same sense, I was about to say Majira because Majira is also like straight up in my head here, because there are many fursuits a lot like Majira's, and Majira's complained about it on several occasions that he continually gets confused with other fursuiters.
Mm-hmm.
And weirdly enough, he's also 3 to 4 feet taller than everybody else.
Oh.
I hear Majira is like super tall, like almost 7 feet,
Damn.
Oh wow.
6'9", maybe close enough. Well, I guess. Stopping. Okay. But with with those kinds of things in mind, I mean, like being at a convention, it always seems a lot more complicated. I mean, what kind of stuff does one have to do to be able to go to there? What do you need to consider, either as staff or as help staff or as just a general con goer? What do you need to look out for?
I'd say as a con goer, the two biggest things are honestly time and money. And not even at the convention. Once you're at the convention, you look at the schedule, you decide what you do, and you go do it. But you have to plan ahead, take vacation time off from work, and make sure that you budgeted enough money for it months in advance so that you can go there and enjoy the con without worrying about that.
Yep. I know for us, the most expensive part of the convention was the hotel.
Definitely.
Yeah, I
especially
think that's for most
they-
people.
Yeah. Since the convention's 4 days, we got there. Well, we got to the venue on Wednesday and stayed through Sunday night. And so we were there for, 5 nights?
Yep.
And so,
Sheesh.
yeah, that adds up quite a bit. Especially when the hotels aren't necessarily super cheap.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But at the same time, I'd say it was definitely worth it, not having to worry about, arriving the day of the convention or anything,
Yeah.
or
Definitely.
having to leave the last night of the convention or anything like that.
Definitely.
Yeah, you buy yourself a lot of peace of mind, really.
Mm. And that's
Yep.
yeah. If I can sort of turn the conversation back to our convention as well, that's kind of something that we're going for as well. Like we wanted the whole thing to be run from one central location, where everyone is close enough to the function halls and and the venue itself, so that everyone, like, included in the price is that peace of mind that there is a place for you to sleep, where everyone else will also sort of be up late at night if you want to hang out and have a beer with people, that you don't have to drive home, that kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
Yep.
we want that peace of mind to be built into the price of the whole convention.
Yeah. Whereas I
Yep.
think with MFF,
Say again, Ivik, you
they
broke
do
up.
have.
Yeah.
The thing with MFF would be that it's not that they have like they have a whole bunch of hotels that are part of the entire con experience,
That's
Mhm.
right.
but they're all separately priced. They're not necessarily they're
Yeah.
connected, but they're not the place that you would go to you know you can choose between 10 miles, 20 miles, and 30 miles away if you had to.
Well, they're all the hotels that partner with the convention are within walking distance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Might
if
be
you
a
can't
long walk,
necessarily
but you can walk for sure.
okay, like how long is a good walk?
Um,
I'd say probably the furthest hotel from the convention is just a little under a mile away.
That's not
So
too bad.
2 kilometers
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's not too
Mile is
bad.
1.6.
of fuzz. 1.6 kilometers.
Yeah, that's not
yeah,
too
probably a
bad.
little under 2 kilometers.
Because weirdly enough, I mean, like the venue that we conventions, okay, it does have like a separate place for overflow, for instance, and it's literally around about like it's maybe a kilometer from where the actual everything's happening. It's just that it's I'm not going to talk about it, but in any case, like so, walking is something that people are willing to do at a convention. Obviously, if you don't want to get the closer venue, yeah,
Well, it's some of it's if you can get the closer venue.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
how
the
stressful
hotel
is
where the hotel where the con actually takes place is the
Was it the? Gosh,
trying to remember.
I don't remember. Was it
Um,
like the Hyatt Regency?
yeah, I
it's
think it was
always
the
a
Hyatt
high.
Regency hotel was
Almost always.
it was like instantly booked. They opened up the booking for it.
Yeah, it was booked within minutes.
Yep.
I'm not surprised in the slightest.
Yep. And
I mean,
so yeah, it's hard to get a spot there.
Mhm.
But yeah, some of the other hotels are like, like there's one that's pretty much right next door, and then there are a couple that are maybe 5 minutes walk away, and so
Okay.
you can still get pretty close.
Yep.
But then yeah, you could also go for like a separate hotel, or I mean, if you live in Chicago, then maybe you just drive to it every day.
Yeah. Cool. Just letting you guys know that if we ever move, we're moving to Chicago.
There you go.
There you go.
Maybe not necessarily outskirts Chicago. We'll go there and we'll sleep in the car.
Well, Rosemont is where the convention takes place, so it's technically outside of Chicago, but it's in the Chicago area.
So you're still going to
Smaller town,
be...
suburban. Yeah, and I don't know, like when. So weirdly enough, and I mean, this probably connects in a little way to, like, just the communities as a whole. And Trace, I think maybe this connects to the question that I asked you the last time you were on, in respect to like differences between the two communities that you sort of belong to and interact with. Um, like when it comes to international furs at places like MFF, um, how exactly, or like, are they easier to talk to, or difficult like that? What exactly do you experience from there? Like, have you ever seen an international fur convention?
Um, I'd say at MFF in particular, the convention is just so huge that for me personally, it's harder to get to know individuals, and like it's harder for any individuals to necessarily stand out. There's so much going
Definitely.
on.
I do not
So I
blame
mean,
you.
I think there were a lot of international furs, but I don't know that we really got the chance to meet many or any of them.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, you
unfortunately.
still you still met a fair few. Can you
Um,
guys hear me?
We undoubtedly,
Yeah, we can hear you.
saw a bunch of international furs. or the same panels as International Furs, but again, there are just so many people that kind of paradoxically, I don't know that we really met anybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not like yeah, it's not like Bavarian furs like wander around with the lederhosen and an accordion, so you can like immediately like pinpoint them in a crowd.
That's also
Scottish
true.
ones all in kilts.
Yeah,
Yes.
like playing the bag, like a Scottish furry, like a Scottish terrier playing the bagpipes, just like walking down the hallway. You can hear him from like 6 miles away.
Yep,
Speaking of,
that
obviously,
definitely happened to us repeatedly.
I was about to say, like, how exactly is it to try to sleep at a place like that, especially with people constantly awake, doing videos, doing that kind of stuff? That's another thing I do want to talk about, like media creating furries.
Well, I think my guess is, I mean, I don't think we ever really had an issue with it, but we were in a separate hotel from the convention itself, and so I think they do a pretty good job of distinguishing, like the more convention center area from the area where the rooms are. Like I think the rooms all tend to be like higher floors, and so you won't necessarily have. I don't think you'd really have crowds in a lot of those places, and so I think most of what you would get would probably be, kind of ordinary hotel noise. Yeah, our hotel. I mean, about the most we saw other furs was, in the elevators and in the lobby of our hotel.
That's
Like we
not too
didn't
bad.
really. Yep.
No, it was honestly going to our own room was very quiet, very peaceful.
Yep.
We never had any troubles at all.
Do you
Yeah.
think that's because most people would rather main hood?
Say again.
Do you think that's where people? Well, it's one of the. Do you think that people do their media mostly in the main hotel rather than, like, say, from the outside ones?
Possibly. I mean, I think that they also do just have a good system of having designated areas where if safers are doing podcasts or whatever, I don't know that there would be much reason for them to necessarily be up in the hotel areas recording stuff, because there really wouldn't be all that much going on. So I think they'd mostly going to be in more like the lobby convention center areas where there are actually things happening.
Oh, makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not
So-
randomly gonna run into a a puppy fur, or someone that you know from the internet in the hallway. You're definitely gonna find them in the lobby.
Well, you might still find them in the hallway. I mean,
Yeah, it's less likely for sure.
yeah, it's less likely, but I mean, it's a definite possibility just because there are furs everywhere.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you very well might see someone that you recognize. But yeah, more likely you'll spot a lot of people in the venue where things are actually happening.
All right. There is a storm.
Yeah, I've just mentioned. You cut out. Storm's rolling in on his side, so he might be dropping out every now and then. Maybe if that's the case, let's sort of see if we can sort of start wrapping this up, Ivik, so you don't sort of have to drop in and out the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, well,
it's a fun conversation. It's a fun conversation.
It is, yeah, but I mean, yeah, it's difficult to have you like drop in and out the whole time, but we can keep going until I don't know, you get hit by lightning or something.
Knowing my weekend, I think that's definitely a possibility at this
Oh
point.
no!
Yeah, I heard it's a bit of a bummer.
Yeah, no worries. We'll get through this. But yeah, I mean, can you guys still hear me? Fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes? Okay. Cool. So while you guys still have me, that sounds so conceited. I'm sorry. Yeah. Like, so I mean, I know that we kind of spoke about like just some of the breathe and talk. That's exactly what I'm supposed to be trying to do.
Yes.
So we kind of covered some of the things that you have to look out for, some of the things you have to do when you're going to a convention, that being the idea of booking your hotel, taking those into account, things like that. But like, if you could ever consider a to-do list, what do you think a to-do list for a big convention would be?
For me, myself, the two biggest things are go to the dealer's den and go to a bunch of cool panels.
Okay,
Uh,
that's good to know.
Yeah, I think the big thing is I'd recommend, if you're going to a big con, definitely try looking at the schedule in advance and start getting an idea of things like which panels you want to attend, and if there are any furs that you want to look out for. Start getting an idea of where they might be if you want to try to run into them.
Stalk.
Looking at who's in the dealer's den, and getting an idea of like who you might want to see in there. And so yeah, I'd say generally, if you can plan things out in advance, I think that helps. But then also definitely planning day to day as well. Because then you can
Six
kind
to
of
one.
see how you're feeling about things, and look at, do we want to go to this panel, or do we want to spend some time here in the dealer's den, or do we want to try visiting the art show, or anything like that.
And like Ivik pointed out, 621.
Yep, and yeah, you definitely have to keep that in mind. Make sure that you're sleeping and eating and showering and all of those good things.
Mm.
Taking care of yourself.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
at the last convention, I definitely didn't 621 at all, particularly very well.
Which
I think
which
at
which,
worst-
which number was sacrificed more, the 6, the 2, or the 1?
The 6, definitely the 6.
That's the easiest one to let go of, for
Yeah.
sure.
Then again, I mean, like I slept, I think 3 hours, possibly a night.
Ooh.
It's okay, like over a short time. Okay.
Yeah,
But-
even
Yeah.
so, I think that as a whole, you'll enjoy your con experience a lot more if you're well rested and you're not starving, and certainly everyone else will appreciate you having showered at least once a day.
Yep.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know what the 6-2-1 rule is, 6 hours of sleep, 2 meals a day, 1 shower a day.
Most people would say 6 meals a day, 2 hours of sleep, and 1 shower the weekend.
One shower overall.
Yeah. Screw it, I don't have time to shower.
Yeah.
Musky huskies all down the hallway.
Yeah, like
Oh, look.
I will be carrying a spray bottle with hand sanitizer in it. Just, yeah. Do your bit. Stay fresh, I suppose. Otherwise,
Yes.
you will be hosed down.
I do want to. You talked about things to do when you go to the cons. With MFF in particular, there's a fur who goes by the name Alkali,
Yep.
and he runs Whose Lion Is It Anyway? 2 separate panels, one with the audience participating and one run by staff of improv games.
Oh, nice.
Those are must-sees for me.
Actually, pretty much any panel that has Alkali in it is going to be a good time.
He is both hilarious and big-hearted.
Yeah.
We've actually been trying to get Alkali onto podcast, but I think timelines just do not really allow.
Yeah, I really hope you can get him on, because
Yeah.
he would be a ton of fun to have on the show, I know for sure.
Definitely.
But then, I mean, there are all sorts of big panels and things going on at MFF to look for. Like one of the other big things was the Foxes and Peppers shows.
Of course.
And there were a couple of those this year. There was the one or they did kind of a Christmas special. That was all ages. And then there was 18 plus charity event that they did as well, charity show. And
Interesting.
And yeah, they were both really cool.
And with the
You cut out a bit.
Sorry, you cut out.
Yeah.
no, the storm is. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. Ooh, okay. So, with the yes, no.
Yes,
Yes.
we can
Yes.
hear you. Just stop
Okay.
doing Natalie Wynn.
Who?
Never mind.
Keep going.
Yeah. Jesus. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
Um,
I can hear the thunder in the background.
Oof.
She's a biggin. But yeah, if the house blows away, I'll start screaming.
Oh no.
It's okay. It's a stone house. It's a brick house, so I don't think that anything will break. Also, it's newish.
If
Anyway.
it goes away, you'll definitely be screaming.
Yeah.
Probably be a good end to the weekend. Anyway, so but with all of those things in mind, like obviously there are particular big names that he needs to go and watch, but what happens, like, who would you suggest of the, like, and this is for anybody who knows that they're going to be coming to a particular convention, who would you actually suggest as, I guess lesser known, and I'm putting those into parentheses, nobody can see, but lesser known names that you should definitely go out and have a look at?
Well, I mean, one name that I know you're definitely familiar with is Tempo. Tempo Kun is, someone that I think doesn't get necessarily a ton of attention in the fandom, but he is really cool, and I know you guys know that because he's on all the time.
Yeah. That man is just like energy incarnate, though.
Yes. But yeah, and he's super approachable in person too. I mean, he was just hanging out in the dealer's den, and we got to go up to him and just chatted with him for a while, and came back later and he recognized us again, and so yeah, it was a great time talking to him. As far as other less recognized furs.
She doesn't have a panel, but I am a huge fan of Chu, who does the Slightly Damned webcomic. And
Slightly Damned is awesome.
Slightly Damned is
my gosh,
fantastic.
it's fantastic.
I highly recommend checking it out if you have not.
She usually has a panel stand in the dealer's den.
Yeah, and yeah, she's,
Griffin?
if you're on the Furry FM site, she's actually the one who did our badges that are the art for today.
Okay.
That's
Yep.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yep, she did those for us last year.
Now I recognize the art style. Oh,
But yeah,
cool.
she is also super approachable and really friendly, and yeah, she's really cool, and she does some wonderful stuff.
All right. Anything else? Any other notable happened at MFF that you guys want to talk about? Like,
Anything to all sorts of stuff.
everything was notable.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
One thing about volunteering I wanted to bring up.
Mhm.
We didn't realize this when we got started, but if you volunteer, I don't know if they're going to necessarily do it exactly the same way next year, but we volunteered on Thursday before the con got started, and then we volunteered really late at night a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
And when we volunteered at those times, because there weren't a lot of other people volunteering, they let us go and double count those hours
Oh, nice.
towards the 10 hours for free registration for next year. So if you do go volunteer, it's worth considering volunteering some of your hours, either on Thursday or at a time where there aren't a lot of other people volunteering, and seeing if you can't really rack up some hours towards some of the incentives they give volunteers.
That's really
So
cool.
that's t-shirts and
I mean, things like, well, you get like a little ribbon identifying you as.
That's
So
useful.
to differentiate the staff from the other volunteers, they call the the drop-in volunteers gophers.
yeah.
So you get a little ribbon that identifies you as a gopher, and yep, you get a T-shirt, and I mean, I think I don't know. They had like a list of things that you got for volunteering. Also got use of the staff lounge as well, which I don't think we really went into, but I know that you can just walk in and get free food and stuff for being a volunteer.
What?
Nice.
You guys didn't do free food?
Um,
We did go to the
Come on!
we did go to the con suite offered to everyone at the convention.
yeah, there is
Yeah.
also a suite where you can get food as well. So we did do that. We didn't really venture into the staff lounge.
How dare you? How dare you not take advantage?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Noel. Come on.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry I didn't do the thing that everybody else.
Yeah, just eat the food, Tina.
Oh boy. All right. So sure. But I mean, like, no.
Yes. Try again. Yeah, we lost him.
Yeah. Oh, hi. Hey. Hey.
Hi.
Yes.
Are you still
Hi.
Are you still there? Are you speaking? Are you?
Yes.
Have you been
I
blown away yet?
was. No, not yet. But that was not me. that was that was Badge in the background. So if you could, which cons would you guys like to, aside from MMA?
Definitely South African.
Definitely South Africa.
Nice.
That's
And
that's the one we're
Loaded
hoping
question.
for.
that
Yep.
wasn't loaded from me. I didn't.
Uh-huh.
No, it
Like-
really
No,
is. It's
it-
something we've been
that-
planning on going for years.
I've actually been wanting to go to SAFC for years, in part to meet you guys, and so yeah, being able to probably actually make it this year is a big deal.
Definitely.
Yep.
And then we're also kind of eyeballing Denver.
Yeah, we're thinking about maybe going to Denver this summer. And again, I mean, probably sticking to cons that are a bit closer to us, with the exception of SAFC.
Yeah.
Smart
fair enough.
move.
What about FE, for instance? Fernal Equinox or any of the Canadian conventions? They're closer to Denver.
I mean, anything in Canada is going to be very far north
Yeah.
of where we are.
Yeah.
All right. I always fail sort of orient your state.
Okay, so we're in Nebraska. We're kind of right in the middle of the U.S. We're one state over from the, exact middle of the U.S. in Kansas.
All right.
You know what's weird? Every single time I hear the word, I think north.
If you're in Nebraska,
Some goodness reason. Yeah.
Nebraska.
I
No,
think snow when I hear Nebraska.
we do get snow in the winter, but yeah, we're not that far north.
I think
You're like,
geographically, the way the United States is set up is that there are two mountain ranges that run north to south on either side of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates kind of a funnel where during the winter, cold air blows down from Canada across the Midwest. And most of us get a lot of snow during the winter as a result, even if we're not very far north.
Yep. A lot of
You're like-
those.
I
north-
see now. You guys are 2 states above Oklahoma, or not Oklahoma, Is it Oklahoma?
2 states south of Oklahoma. That might be.
Above. No, north.
I'd probably have to look at the
We're
map.
below South Dakota,
Yeah.
and then as a surprise,
Dakota.
we're also below North Dakota.
And then below you, Tennessee, and Tennessee is above the state with Oklahoma in it.
Okay, yeah, we're two states north of Oklahoma, and 3 states south of Canada.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we have the 2 Dakotas north of us.
Yeah, North Dakota
Looking
shares the
at
border
that.
with Canada, right?
What's that?
North Dakota shares the border with Canada,
Yes.
Yeah, North
Yes, it
Dakota
does.
shares
Yes,
the
it
border
does.
with Canada.
right? Okay,
Well,
good.
pretty much half of the people in Canada.
Wow.
Most of the personality from Canada as well, from what I've read.
Yeah, and then MFF is 2 states over in Illinois.
There is a Nebraska, the chat currently named Trill.
Trill, yes.
Trill. Yep.
I mentioned this
I must have
podcast to some of our Nebraska fur friends.
Oh,
Hi,
nice.
Trill.
Hey.
Hey, Trill.
How many furs are in Nebraska, actually?
There's a good number, surprisingly. We are in a chat that has about 200 members, a bit over.
Huh.
It's
Yep.
It's like almost our entire population of fur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why haven't you guys had a con yet in Nebraska, or is it just because?
I think it's a big part of it's just organization, and
Uh-huh.
I think this has been like something that's come up in the past as well, and just hasn't necessarily worked out up to this point. But I mean, I certainly think it's something that could happen in the future. I'm sure there are enough furs in the general area for it to be able to happen. I think it would just take someone to put
To
in
own up, yeah,
a lot of
someone-
time and effort to set it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone
Yeah,
to just
definitely.
own it, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess
And
that's something.
while
to
we-
talk at some point.
Well, we don't have cons. We do have a bunch of meetups. So we'll go like Trace and I couldn't make it last night, but last night a lot of the Nebraska furs met up to go out to eat and then go ice skating together.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Alright.
I have a friend, Midna, who says hi.
Cool.
Hi,
Right,
Midna.
So,
She's listening right now.
Nice.
Nice.
Hi, Midna. Okay. I think you wanted to say something before you cut out.
No, I was just randomly making noises. Sorry.
Okay. So nothing useful.
Yeah, no. So pretty much the usual. There's a lot of chat here. Welcome to all.
Welcome to everybody.
Everybody. But yeah, I think this is probably a good place to end off the chat, and really, really appreciate the two of you joining us. We actually do want to have you two on again. at some
Oh,
point.
thank you.
Yeah, no, this is
Th-
definitely
those
fun.
Are, yeah, those are definitely plans in the future. Everything's in a pipeline currently in my head, and that pipeline tends. Hey, am I breaking up?
No, we
Nope,
can hear
you're
you.
here.
Oh, yeah. So definitely gonna hear from you two again soon.
Yeah, we'll
just
we'll
see
keep
how
you guys
it goes.
informed as soon as we have our bearings, essentially. Like
Yeah.
every day is just a new like fight for for essentially the admin of this channel for us.
Yeah, and stability in some senses.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's really good to have the two of you on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you
Yes.
so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
That was a pleasure. In all honesty, it was really fun having you guys on and hearing sort of the backstage, and thank you for sort of incentivizing people and telling them go out and see if you can do some volunteer work at the con.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a genuinely good time. I
It
enjoyed
really
it.
is, yeah. I'd say it's definitely worthwhile.
Awesome. All right. So I think from here on we are going to sign off, and Ivik is hopefully going to try and play some music, given that the weather doesn't destroy your system.
I think the worst of the storm pressed on for a little bit. It's still some heavy rain. Definitely still bearable. We're technically running 2 voice chats at the same time. If you haven't heard, like scratch in the
Badge in the background.
background.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, like if we handle 2 chats at the same time, I'm pretty sure we should be able to handle a nice little bit of music. Well, what I can ask is requests.
Music requests
You broke off yet?
Music requests
from you
from
guys.
the 2 of you.
Okay.
What you want us to play?
Oh boy.
You can always just tell us in chat.
Oh,
Don't have to press you live on the air.
yes.
Why don't you go ahead and, for me, go ahead and play Fireflies by Owl City.
Ooh,
Can do.
haven't heard that one in a while. That's a nice song. Very jaunty.
That's a good.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are also listening on the app, if you can just pay a little bit of attention to a particular thing, if you scroll down from the main page, you'll see request a song. You can also request songs there. You'll be able to see my playlist as soon as I go live. And then just below that, there's a little donate button for buying people coffee. Again, it's all voluntary. If you want it to furry.fm, please do.
I bet
More
you
than
shall.
appreciate it. Shh. So it's becoming priority these days, or not priority?
Policy.
I don't know. Words. Policy. Yes, definitely policy. It's like I'm being forced to tell people to pay it.
Oh no.
Yeah, but I mean, again, like any sort of helps keep maintenance of the site, everything like that. It's where every little bit goes a long way.
It helps keep my mic arm oiled.
Yeah, but keeps cats fed.
Yes.
We're talking about him.
Keeps the
Um,
hamsters in the server room running cool.
Yep. Gives them a nice fan. And Trill actually missed everything. We're sorry. We're going to be uploading this video to
YouTube.
our YouTube
Yeah.
site.
Maybe
So
tonight,
you can
maybe
just-
tomorrow, but shortly after this.
So just keep an eye on the south-afrifur site. If you just go into the easiest way to probably find us is just type in south-afrifur. You'll see a whole bunch of things with content of south-afrifur, but our channel shouldn't be too far off the top.
Yeah.
If you type that out.
Alternatively, follow us on the Twitter. We always post when a
Yes.
video goes live on the Twitter.
And randomly, whenever
Never the mood
Whenever-
strikes us.
we tend to sometimes just randomly put people on blast. I say blast, not blast, but we
don't
like-
start beef on Twitter, Ivik. We don't do Twitter
no,
beef.
we don't. We don't do Twitter beef. We only do chicken. Double entendre.
I'm vegan these days. Well, social media vegan.
Okay, so no beef, just
Just wholesome goodness. Actually, it's more a case of like I'm a social media vegetable. Like I don't post.
yeah.
Sounds like me.
If you guys have anything interesting, just tag us in whatever you sort of want to talk about. Things like that, just tag us on there. We'll definitely look into it and get round to it. If you feel that there's a particular guest that you want to listen to, of course you can do that. But yeah, so any media is pretty much good media. Just let us know. We're at south-afrifur.
Yeah, and where we can find whomsoever you wish to point in our direction.
Right. Well, thanks again, Trace and Kit, for joining us. We really do appreciate you taking out the time for us. And yeah, we hope to
Absolutely.
talk
Thank
to
you so much for having us
Absolutely.
on.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was great. We shall see you guys again shortly, and we shall see you listeners also in about 10 or so minutes while Ivik sets up. And yeah, next week we have a pre-recorded session, correct, Ivik?
Yes, that will be the pre-recorded session that we
Did like a month ago.
2 weeks.
Okay.
With it was 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I swear.
It was
With
Tempo,
Tempo, right?
Tempo
With
and Slate,
Tempo,
yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
Tempo and Slate.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah.
See you guys. Have a good evening.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you all
See
for
ya.
listening.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah,
a good day,
absolutely.
everyone.
Thanks for listening and thanks for having us, Ivik.
All right.
See you guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.